I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know?
Good afternoon. Happy Monday to everybody out there. Good to see you, Larry, Dwayne, Lydia. Welcome back. Darren May, as always. Scott, good to see you. MMB in the house. Ricky, CJ. I mean, it's a happy Monday. Hard to complain about a day like today.
This is a tough team right here.
Well, not really. Maybe after the game's over, you're tough. Maybe a little bit. Dude, I mean, for as big as a win as it was for Michigan. Hold on. Let me set the deck here first. Before we get into the show, this may come as a surprise to a lot of you, but I really don't have a plan for a show today. Trent and I went live after the game. We sort of talked about the game itself, and now we've obviously had a couple of days to digest what happened. And because early signing day is going to be on Wednesday, Trent and I will not be doing a fan-led Wednesday. We're going to be covering all of the new Michigan Wolverines that are signing their NLIs that day. So we're going to combine this into a fan-led Monday. We're going to sort of, transition into that a little bit. We have some things that we want to talk about, but we want you to help guide the show as well, mostly because I am ill-prepared to run an hour-long show today. But yeah, now that we've... CJ says if I had a plan, he would be surprised. Look, it really is incredible. Before we get into the show, like Trent and I hop on here, and I don't know, does it seem like we have a plan when we do this? Because more often than not, there is zero plan. And I remember when we first started doing live shows, like if you do a pre-record, if you screw up, you can stop it, you can restart it, you can edit things out. When you're live, you're live. Like there's no getting around it. It just kind of is what it is. And I feel like we do a pretty good job of, faking our way through it. So,
I feel like maybe most people don't realize it, but I think most of it's on the fly. Like we're just talking and then whatever comes up, comes up.
Whatever happens, whether it's talking about male pattern baldness, Trent's fashion choices, whatever it is, we figure out a way to get through it. But obviously, talking Michigan, Ohio State, that's got to be on the top of the board today. We talked about it when we went live Saturday after the game, just sort of the ins and outs of the games, and I guess how confused we were about how it all played out. I think that going into it, and I remember saying this on Saturday, that if you were a Michigan fan who thought Michigan was going to win the game, I don't know that was based on anything of substance other than the belief that just Ryan Day was soft and that team was soft and Michigan had the mental edge, which is true. And I think that Saturday proved that. But in terms of like on-field talent and what we had seen from Ohio State and sort of that battle earlier in the year in October against Oregon, it just seemed like the Buckeyes had far too much firepower for Michigan. Even though we believe strongly in Michigan's defense, I mean, you're down Will Johnson in that game. And then you look over at the offensive side of the ball. And I said this on Saturday, I'm not trying to knock these guys at all, but offensively, Michigan has been not great this year. And so just didn't know where the points were going to come from. But as it turns out, as has often happened in this rivalry over the last 4 years now, Michigan forced the Buckeyes to play Wolverine football. And when the Buckeyes have to play Wolverine football, they can't compete with it. And so the game is one thing, Trent, but really what's been dude, it was like, I saw it on like national news stations now, like CNN, Fox are covering this, the melee, the incident after the game. There is now this big discussion about flag planting and who's to blame. And the Big Ten issued a statement last night and a fining Michigan and Ohio State $100,000 each, which is a drop in the bucket for both programs, but more so Michigan because there's more money in Ann Arbor. But it's not really going to make a difference. But Trent, now that you've had some time to digest this and this post-game incident, really sucking up all the news coverage, I mean, thoughts on it? I mean, do Do you put any blame on Michigan for sort of, poking the bear and running to midfield and trying to recreate the celebration from 2022?
No, I don't blame Michigan whatsoever. Regardless of what Gus Johnson or Kirk Herbstreit, anyone thinks, and whether it's right or wrong, it's part of college football now. You see it all over the place where teams will plant their flag right in the center of midfield. I mean, it happened twice to Michigan this year. Oregon and Texas both did it. There was no fight. Did I expect Michigan to do it? Absolutely. I would also expect Ohio State to do it if the rules were reversed. If this was in...
We talked about it ahead of that 2023 game that damn well the Buckeyes brought a big Block O flag with them. And had they won that game in 2023 in Ann Arbor, they would have went and planted it on the Block M right at the midfield. And, again, it's hard to plant a flag when you don't win the game. But we did see it with other teams, right?
Yeah.
We saw Texas do it. We saw Oregon do it. Yep. And where was Michigan when that was occurring? Where were they?
They were walking into the tunnel. In
the tunnel, doing what they were supposed to do, taking the L because that's how it works.
But Chris, to be fair as well, we're talking about a heated rivalry. We're talking about an Ohio State team and Ryan Day, who hasn't beaten Michigan now in 4 straight years. I expect Ohio State, the way they reacted, their human side of things, like you shouldn't be happy about another team planting their flag at midfield. However, do the talking during the game. Like if you're that upset about it, play better. Play better and win the game. Like, obviously, you don't want fights happening. But, I mean, I would expect Ohio State to not to be happy about it. Should there have been a melee? Absolutely not. That doesn't look good. And there was like 4 melees on Saturday during rivalry weekend because of flag planting. And I wouldn't be shocked with how the NCAA operates. Mm-hmm. If there's a new rule put in place next season that you can't take a flag to an opposing school.
Oh, I don't think there's any question that we're going to see some sort of rule change come because of what we saw play out this weekend. I mean, you've got, guys like Kirk Herbstreit calling for change and calling for, people to be suspended and yada, yada, yada. I just think that it was, like I said online, I mean, if you're Ohio State, it's going to sting. It's going to hurt. You don't want to see the Wolverines celebrating at midfield on the Block O and planting their flag at midfield. But the reality of the situation is Michigan, as a 3-touchdown underdog, was well within their right to hang around on the field and celebrate getting a win in Columbus. There was nobody in the world outside of a few people, Desmond Howard, Jake Butt, Charles Woodson. I mean, the usuals, suspects, picking Michigan to win that game. But for the vast majority of us, we expected Ohio State to win that football game. And for Michigan to go in and win the game and win it the way they did it and prevent Ohio State from being able to do it. Ohio State scored 1 touchdown. We're shut out in the second half. That is ridiculous for an offense like that. So for Michigan to pull off a win like that, you're damn right. They had every right to celebrate on the field. The problem is that Ohio State is soft. Their program is soft. Their players are soft and fragile, and their coaching staff is soft and fragile, and the losses have clearly taken its toll on them. And so when Michigan was doing what they were well within their right to do, Ohio State saw an opportunity to start a fight. And if you look at, the video coming out of the press box is clear as day. You've got about 25 Wolverines standing at the middle of the field, and then you see a whole host of red jerseys come running in from the right side of the screen. Michigan didn't go looking for a fight. They were celebrating, doing what they did back in 2022. And I think a lot of this comes from the fact that after it happened in 2022, you saw former Buckeyes come out and say, back in our day, we wouldn't allow that shit to happen. That wouldn't have happened if we were still suited up like this is this, this is that, this is this. And so that had to have played a factor. They knew that if that happened, they were going to have to respond to it. And so putting this on anybody outside of Ohio State, I think is ridiculous. Acting like this was a, hey, both sides are at fault sort of thing, I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's pretty clear as day what happened. Michigan won as a 3-touchdown underdog. They celebrated on the field as they should have been able to do, and Ohio State was sour about it. And so they wanted to try to do something about it, and the only thing they could do at that point was start a fight. And I think that, two of the images that really stand out to me, or videos that really stand out to me. One, Ryan Day. Ryan Day just standing there watching it all go down.
Just
And
perplexed.
Right. And I don't know, is it because he was in such disbelief at what was happening? Or do you think that there was a part of him that was just like, look, this might be the only win I get today, is letting my players go out and fight? I mean, what do you think was going through his mind as he stood there watching his players fight at midfield?
I mean, I think he was just in shock that they actually lost this game. We're talking about the biggest spread ever entering the game between Michigan and Ohio State ever. And it was supposed to be a for sure thing that Ohio State would win this game. It was really their best opportunity to do so in a long time, because we know it's coming from Michigan. And Sherrone Moore now has beaten Ohio State 2 straight years, last year because of the suspension, but still he's led the charge now for 2 years in a row. And my opinion, as long as Sherrone Moore's the head coach at Michigan, it's going to be tough for Ohio State to win this game because of how physical Michigan is going to be with Sherrone Moore as the head coach. So unless something dramatically changes with Ryan Day and the way he recruits, I think it's going to be tough sledding for Ohio State now for the next several years as Michigan only gets better and stronger with Sherrone. So I think it was kind of a, I can't believe we lost this game type of feeling. And he knows the outpour of hatred Ohio State fans have right now at him for losing these games, and it's only getting worse.
I mean, yeah, when you listen to him talk about it before the game, when he, we said this, I think on Friday's show, but, Ryan Day talking about it's the worst thing that's ever happened in his life, like outside of his father passing away and the impact that losing has had, just on his life. And that was before Saturday, so like, I can't imagine things are going very well for Ryan Day. And, for another thing that stood out in the post game. So you have Ryan Day standing there watching it all take place. Sherrone Moore was in the mix, trying to get his guys, trying to get everything separated. Ryan Day's just sort of standing off on the side with a scowl on his face, watching it all happen. And then you have Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer is a veteran defensive end at Ohio State, was very vocal about the fact that he came back. Yeah, he wanted to play for a national championship, but we know why he came back. We know why a lot of those guys came back, because they hadn't beaten Michigan in their careers and they wanted another shot at the Wolverines. Jack Sawyer in the post game, by the way, even if you watch the broadcast, Jack Sawyer was running his mouth all afternoon long, talking shit left and right. And after the game was over, there's video of Jack Sawyer losing his mind about Michigan planting the flag. And then there is, and I don't know if I've put it on social media yet, but I will. Trent, did you see the video where Mason Graham and Jack Sawyer are exchanging words, and Mason Graham is standing about 15 yards away, and he's just calling, in Sawyer's direction. He's saying Ohio State P word. We won't say it on the, we're going to try to keep it PG here. But Mason Graham, cool, calm, collective. He's just repeatedly saying Ohio State P word, Ohio State P word. And Jack Sawyer, the camera pans to Sawyer, and Sawyer is screaming. He's like, "Your season's over. You don't got any other game after this." And it's like, come on, man. You spent a year talking about how you came back for this one game. After you beat Indiana, you didn't even want to talk about the win over Indiana. You want to talk about Michigan. It was Michigan. It was gold pants. It was about doing it for the team, doing it for the guys, doing it for the Ryan Day. And then after you lose, your only response is, "You don't have another game to play," which is incorrect, by the way, because Michigan will be playing in the Duke Mayo Bowl or whatever the hell they go to. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everything we saw play out at the end, the reason why you saw that play out in this rivalry against a team that was 10-1, taking on a team that had 6 wins on the season, was because for Ohio State, this was their Super Bowl. This was the one game on the schedule they couldn't lose, and they lost it. And the fallout has been glorious. I have enjoyed it. I've got receipts upon receipts that I am still going through. But when you look at it overall, everything that happened in that post-game incident, that is 100% on Ryan Day. It's 100% on Ohio State. If they would have just done what you're supposed to do, which is take the L, take your ass to the locker room, and get better next year, none of it would have happened. But this time, they couldn't let it go. And I think a lot of it is because this narrative about that program being soft just continues to grow and grow and grow. And Saturday certainly didn't help that case. I mean, even fighting at midfield, they look soft as ever. And Jack Sawyer, I think, was leading in that effort.
Yeah, I think I might have said this after the game, but I feel like the mentality, the mental side of football is such a big thing because you let Michigan hang in the game for way too long. Even that one half is too long. And it comes back to Michigan players never losing to Ohio State. And it goes back to Ohio State players losing to Michigan every single year. And then you're in that tight game. Ryan Day puckers up, Chip Kelly. I don't know if Ryan Day took play calling away from Chip Kelly or what, but that was not a Chip Kelly offense that we saw on Saturday. That's a different talking point. But anyway, I just goes back to Ohio State having that same feeling of we just can't beat this team. Like we can't beat them. And we saw it play out in Michigan. You let a team like that hang in way too long and they're going to get the job done.
Yeah, and more so than any other game that's taken place before, because I think that they tried to justify it with the Connor Stallions thing, and in 2021 it was, the whole team was sick and blah blah blah, but this year, with the way that things were playing out and how much Michigan was struggling and what the narratives were surrounding the two programs, Trent, I don't know where you would rank this win in terms of where it falls over the last 4 wins. But I would argue that this win in 2024 is the most devastating for Ohio State.
It is. Yeah,
it is the one that will break them the most. This is the one that you could try to excuse it and justify it last year and the year before and the year before that, but you can't do it now. And I think from here moving forward, Michigan will unquestionably have the psychological edge over Ohio State, particularly for as long as Ryan Day is the head coach. This has gone on now for 4 years. There are no excuses. And it's crazy because this is where Michigan was during the Hoke era, during the Rich Rod era. And even as a Michigan fan, you could feel it. That final game in November, every time it came calling, you felt it as a fan. You hoped you would win, but you were like, shit. Got to deal with Ohio State. Got to deal. Now the shoe's on the other foot. And that's what they're thinking now moving forward, is because this was the down year. This was the chance. Bryce Underwood's coming next year. Top 10 recruiting class coming in next year. Sharon Moore is going to be here next year. Probably going to have another OC. I'm not sure. We'll talk about that. There's some people that want to give Wink Martindale defensively his flowers, and we will do that when we get to the questions here. But Trent, I don't think there's any question. We talked about it going into the game that we thought Michigan might have the mental edge given what had happened the last 3 years. I think there was maybe some question how big of an edge that was, just given how ineffective they had been all season long. But Trent, after this win, this is number one most devastating win in this rivalry over the last 4 years. And I mean, you could argue, dude, it's the biggest upset in rivalry history.
Yep.
What we saw on Saturday is the biggest upset in rivalry history. I had it pulled up here. Let me just get it on the screen.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I don't know how, if you're Ryan Day, especially Ryan Day, I don't know how you come back from this loss. Like if he has his job next season and you have to go to Ann Arbor, I just don't know how you come away from this loss feeling like you can beat Michigan after what transpired.
You don't. He's broken. He's broken. The fan base is they are broken in Columbus. This is courtesy of FS1. So Michigan's win on Saturday over Ohio State as a 20-point underdog was the biggest upset in rivalry history. The next closest came in 1996 when Michigan won as a 17-point underdog. And then in 2022, Michigan was a 9-point underdog on the road. Obviously, they got the win in Columbus there. And then 1995, also a 9-point underdog. But yeah, man, you're talking about a 20-point underdog, everything stacked against Michigan. You looked at Ohio State's offense, weapons everywhere, just a Ferrari of an offense, and they were completely shut down. And I think that, I don't know that we talked about this on the postgame, but Trent, why do you think it is? We had the conversation at halftime. We hopped on the phone. It was 10-10, and we thought, look, this is great for Michigan. I mean, consider this a win. It's tied. I do think Ohio State's going to pull away in the second half because they've just got too many weapons. And then sure as shit, in the second half, they continued to do what they did in the first half, which is run the ball right into the teeth of the defense where Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant were waiting. They could not do anything offensively. Help me understand, Trent, how an offense like that scores 0 points in an entire half of football.
I can't because I don't understand it. Like you literally fed into Michigan's hand. You're talking about the strength of the Michigan defense with Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, heck, TJ Guy, Rayshon Benny, they all played well. You're talking about all of those guys that you just keep running at. To me, it just made me think that Ryan Day is going to attempt to make this work, and so he can win the game and then be like, I told you we're a physical team. I told you we could out-tough Michigan, but you didn't. Like, we saw Ohio State go right down the field in the final, whatever it was, 2 minutes of the second quarter, crossing routes, out routes, like whatever they wanted was there. And then you just go away from it until it's too late. But by that time, the Michigan defense is so confident. Like I said after the game, Makari Page, Ernest Hausman, Zeke Berry, they all played super well, probably the best they've played all year.
Yeah.
But it's because they had the belief that they can beat Ohio State because they've done it now. They've done it for 4 straight years. And you can't, when you're Ohio State and you're that talented, you can't let Michigan hang in the game as long as you did. But that's what Ohio State did by trying to run the ball straight into the strength of the Michigan defense.
Yeah, and you know what, Trent? It's so strange. It's so strange that there are some conspiracy theories that have started to emerge because of this. And I'm going to write about it, and we'll put it on the SI site, and I'll get it on social media. But because, there's a few people in here watching. I don't know if you guys in the comments, have you heard the conspiracy theories that are coming out of Columbus as to why there's one person that I don't know what his name is, the field goal kicker for Ohio State. They think the fix was in, that the field goal kicker was paid to miss the field goals, do whatever he could do to help Michigan win. The fix was in. We heard Ryan Day talk about the wind after the game. The wind was impacting things, but there's a narrative now about Ryan Day that maybe he had spent the last month exploring other job opportunities, which is why maybe he wasn't as plugged in on Saturday as he needed to be. So here we already have it, Trent. The kicker, the fix was in. He was bought and paid for. It was too windy, and Ryan Day was too preoccupied looking for other jobs to really game plan for Michigan. This is what we're starting to see come out of Columbus now. So, are they excuses? Are they conspiracy theories? I don't know. It just signals to me that it is a completely broken.
I read on Facebook from some Ohio State fans that Ohio State wanted to throw the game so they could attempt to get the 5th seed and have an easier time getting to the national championship.
Worse.
If Ohio State, if there was any fix-in, or if Ohio State wanted to lose the game, they would have reacted the way they did after the game. Ryan Day wouldn't have looked as perplexed as he looked. It drives me insane, man. These Ohio State fans take the loss. Like, you lost the game. Like, it's unfortunate for them. It happens. It's great for Michigan, great for Michigan fans. But at the end of the day, a team has to win, a team has to lose, and Ohio State has taken the L 4 straight years.
This is a message from one fed up Buckeye is how they named themselves here. It says an investigation into Fielding is a must. I guess, is that the last name of the kicker? Fielding is his last name. I am asking for a complete investigation into Jaden Fielding's call logs and text messages weeks up to the game. The missed chip shot is clearly a foul, almost rehearsed. I've seen too much this season. I will not be silent anymore. Game tampering cannot be tolerated. Ohio State was clearly winning yesterday's game, making Michigan play Ohio State football. Personally, I had every Michigan fan I know messaging me during this game. They know it. I know it. Ohio State wins if that game is untampered, but that's not what happened. Once again, Ohio versus the world.
This is a tough team right here.
Oh, what a clown show. What an absolute clown show in Columbus. This is just so fun. I'm having so much fun doing this. This is way more fun than I thought it was going to be. Let's get to some of these questions here. We've got some coming in, and I'm already way behind. CJ Frazier, love to see you as always. He says, if at the beginning of the season I tried to sell you a 7-5 season with wins over Ohio, Michigan State, as well as getting Bryce Underwood, would you have bought it? Trent, is that something you're going to buy? 7-5 coming off of a national championship season, but you know you're going to get a win over Ohio State. You know you're going to beat Michigan State, and you know you're going to land Bryce Underwood off the recruiting trail.
Is he asking if I would believe it or if I would take it?
Well, he's saying, would you have? Well, yeah. I mean, that's. Let me ask you. I mean, that is kind of a different way.
Because would I buy that was going to happen? Like, would I believe it?
No, just answer it both ways.
Okay, if I would believe that it would happen,
yeah.
No. Would I have taken it, knowing that Michigan has the number 1 overall guy coming in next season with the win over Ohio State? Yeah, I would have taken it.
Yeah, I mean, I also would not have believed it because of the win over Ohio State and getting Bryce Underwood. Like those two things just seemed improbable coming into this year. But if you're asking me, like coming off of a national championship season and somebody put that on the table and said, look, this is how the season's going to go. Would you be okay with this, not knowing what will be beyond that in the future? I would have taken it. I would have been a little bit of course I would have taken it, because a fourth straight win over Ohio State would have broken them, and it has broken them, and it has been glorious. And when you can throw Bryce Underwood on top of it, dude, 7-5 season. We talked about this on Saturday. This feels like a completely different season right now versus where it was 3 weeks ago. Like people were like, we got to fire Sharon Moore. We got to fire Wink Martindale. We got to get Kurt Campbell out of here. This program's headed back to the Rich Rod era. And here we are now, 7-win season, winner over Ohio State. You got Bryce Underwood in the fold. You're going to sign a top 10 recruiting class. The future looks bright. And I got to be honest, season feels pretty damn good.
Yeah, for the way that it was looking, I mean, you got to feel great if you're Michigan right now. You looked great against Northwestern. I understand it was Northwestern, but you put up 50 points and then you come back and dominate Ohio State. I get that it was a 13-10 game, but Michigan dominated that game.
Yep.
In the trenches, they dominated the game, which is why they've won every single year. And then on top of that, Sherrod Moore is recruiting at a whole new level. He's got NIL more involved. You have Bryce Underwood coming. Michigan could have a top 5 class before it's all said and done. And I mean, you have to be ecstatic for the future for Michigan football.
Yeah, it's everything has changed over the last 2 weeks. The perception of this program has completely changed when you look at where it was, following the loss to Oregon. It's just people feel differently about everything now. And it just goes to show how much this game means and how much a big win on the recruiting trail means. And Trent, I do wonder, I mean, for as good as this win feels over Ohio State, do you think having a shitty sort of so-so season was necessary to have this type of feeling that we had? Because I feel like if Michigan was in the playoff hunt, now granted, you would want the Wolverines to be a playoff team. You would want them to be in the 12-team playoff and competing for a conference championship. But there's just something about it that it didn't go Michigan's way this year, and that everything seemed to be coming apart. You didn't have a quarterback. You were cycling through running backs. The offensive line was struggling. You couldn't defend the pass. It was issues everywhere. And even in the midst of all of that, Michigan came together, not in Ann Arbor, but in Columbus, and beat that Ohio State team. Trent, I feel like Michigan's struggles this year are playing a big part in why this one feels so damn good.
I mean, I think so. I don't know how I would rank all 4 Michigan wins in the past 4 years. I still think, to me, 21 is number 1. But I'll tell you what, man, I think you can make an argument that this year would be number 2.
Yeah.
I mean, just the way that this season has gone for Michigan, the way Sherrod Moore, first-year head coach, you're talking about a new offensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. Ohio State, 20.5-point favorites, the largest spread ever, and Michigan dominates in the shoe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can make a strong case that this is number 2 on that list.
Yeah, and they're all, individual, 2023, close game, Michigan wins. Obviously, they go on to win the Big Ten championship, get in the playoff, win it all. If Michigan loses that game, you start to talk about the implications of it. But you're right, Trent, just based on emotion, just based on pure feeling and joy, I probably have to put this one at number 2 as well. I think that given everything that was stacked up against Michigan, it truly was, these people that keep doing this Ohio versus the world bullshit. No, it was Michigan versus the world. And it has been that way for a long time, because a lot of people, specifically the folks in Columbus, didn't believe that what Michigan was doing on the field was legitimate. Didn't think they could win without cheating, which, by the way, screw Gus Johnson. Gus Johnson is on my shit list, and I don't think he's ever going to come back. I'm fine with Michigan never doing another big noon game, which is a whole nother topic. We got to figure out what to do with the big noon stuff. But overall, it has been Michigan against the world, and that was certainly the case on Saturday. And to see them come out on top, just given the way this season has gone, it just makes it so damn sweet. And I agree, Trent. I don't know that anything will top the 2021, because that sort of changed the tide and changed the course of everything. But this one, 2021
means something more. I feel
2021 changed the tide. It changed the course of the rivalry. And I think 2024 put a stamp on it and said, it's here to stay. For anybody that thought it was going to fall off and go away and we're having a down year and, the day of reckoning is coming, 2024 was a very emphatic, nah, we're not going anywhere. We own that building and we're planting the flag here. It's our building. So, I mean, just an incredible game, incredible experience for the fans. Let's go to Ricky here. Spent a lot of time on that one. My goodness, we're already at 30 minutes. Ricky from the Facebook page, he says, also make sure everyone sees this, Chris, in all caps. All of us owe Wink Martindale an apology. 80% of this fan base wanted him gone 3 weeks into the season. I'll start it off. I apologize, Wink. That's from Ricky from the Facebook page. Trent, Wink Martindale got a lot of shit for a good chunk of the season. Had all those, potential first-round draft picks on the defensive side of the ball. They were terrible on third down. They were terrible against the pass. They weren't all that great against the run. There really wasn't anything that Michigan was doing well for a good chunk of the season defensively. How much has this defensive effort down the stretch maybe changed your mind in terms of what you think of Wink Martindale and what his future should be on the staff?
Well, Chris, I'm going to start off by patting myself on the back.
Oh, boy.
Because you can go back and watch every episode. I have never said that Wink Martindale should lose his job. And in fact, the last 3 weeks, going back to Indiana in the final half of the game, something like clicked there because Michigan has been stellar on the defensive side of the ball without Will Johnson. Like without arguably your best player on the whole team, you didn't have him. And whatever Wink Martindale did from there on, Michigan's looked like a completely different defense. They look like the 2023 defense, to be honest with you. And I think that, I get the fan base probably were pushing for him to get fired, to leave the program, but you have to now give Martindale at least one more year to see what he can do with recruits coming in, whatever they do with the transfer portal. So hats off to Martindale. He was great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that I ever called for him to be fired. In fact, I'm not even sure that I've called for Kurt Campbell to be fired. I think we've had a very honest conversation about Kurt Campbell and whether or not he should remain as the offensive coordinator, but keeping him on as the quarterback's coach. But I mean, there's no question about it. When you looked at social media, when you looked at what the fan reaction was with Wink Martindale specifically, there were people that wanted him gone early and quickly. And what this defense has turned into, I think, in the latter part of the season here over the last couple of weeks, it is everything that we thought it would be to start, right? We talked about it going into the season. There were questions offensively. You're only returning one starter. You've got to replace the entire offensive line. You've got questions at quarterback. Not quite sure what you're going to have at wide receiver. Now we know. But defensively, we thought that they were going to be elite and they were going to give Michigan a fighting chance in every game. And that wasn't always the case. In fact, if you looked at a good chunk of the season, Michigan defensively in the second half was awful. They were being outscored in the second half routinely. Now you can point to the offense and say, well, it's hard for a defense when an offense can't sustain drives and you're going 3 and out and there's no creativity. And there's definitely some truth to that. But regardless of what you thought about Wink Martindale for the bulk of the season, there's no question about it. I think that it would be a mistake to let him go. And I think that he's found his groove. He's found what works. And I think that keeping him on staff, I think will be a pretty big priority for Sharon Moore in the offseason, and deservedly so. Hats off to him. He's done a hell of a job. And I mean, to shut out Ohio State in the second half, you got to give the players some credit for that. But we talked about this. Coaches have to put them in a position to succeed. And Wink Martindale did that with his defense on Saturday, down his best player at corner of all places. When you look at what is Ohio State's strength? It's at the wide receiver group, right? They've got freaks at wide receiver. All you got to do is toss the ball up. Michigan down Will Johnson. It just felt like that's what it was going to be all afternoon, getting carved up in the secondary. That didn't happen at all. And so for sure you have to give Wink Martindale and his defense some flowers. Yeah,
even that whole defensive staff, really, because you were hearing people about Lamar Morgan. Like, can he not coach the secondary? Secondary's been playing well now since the second half of Indiana. And he's also recruiting at a different level. Like Lamar Morgan's recruiting really well, bringing in talent. Like that whole staff, I feel like in the final 3 weeks, they've all saved their jobs. Now, I mean, you got to turn to the offensive side of the ball. I definitely think there's a role for Kurt Campbell. I think that Michigan should bring in somebody different for OC. But I think that you're going to see a lot of the same staff stay now because of what's happened in the final 3 weeks.
Right. And I mean, let's be real. Like, even though it was a stellar effort from the defense, offensively, they still really didn't do much. Like,
Nope.
the offense wasn't that impressive for Michigan. Had a couple of turnovers, struggled to move the ball. Once again, as was the case against USC, Khalil Mullings coming through down the stretch in one of the biggest moments in that game where it looked like he was going to be stopped well short of the first down. I don't even know that Michigan would have been in field goal range, but he breaks off, what was it, like a 20-yard run, something like that. Gives Michigan a fresh set of downs. They're able to drain more time off the clock, ultimately hit the game winner with the field goal with Zavada, who is just incredible. Paramount that they bring him back, get him back in Ann Arbor. I think, is he a junior right now, or is he going into his junior year?
Who was it? I'm sorry.
Zavada? Dominic Zavada?
He's a junior right now.
Junior right now. So having him back, I think, is an absolute must. But yeah, still some real questions about the offense and sort of, I don't know if it's a play calling issue, a personnel issue, but that offense did not look great on Saturday. Shout out to the defense for keeping the Wolverines in it. And then Zavada, again, you get him within 50 yards and you're golden. Let's go through some of these. Pretty black and white question here. Brad from the Facebook page, he says, do you think Ryan Day gets fired? We talked about that on Saturday. I mean, obviously that is right now the big talk surrounding Ohio State. Trent, now that you've had some time to digest this, Ohio State is, they're not in the Big Ten championship game, but they are going to be in the playoff. Do you see a realistic scenario where Ryan Day gets fired after this season?
I still think that if they don't win the national championship, especially if they get bounced in the first round, I think there's a extremely good chance that Ryan Day isn't coaching there next year. However, I did see a number, and I don't know if it's true, floating around. It's like a $37 million buyout to fire him, which is obviously a ton of money. But I could kind of see I could see Ryan Day resigning. Like, I could see him not wanting to coach there anymore because of all the backlash he's facing.
Just to protect his mental health, right?
Yeah.
Columbus.
So, I mean, I could see that happening, but somehow, I don't think Ryan Day will be coaching there next year if they get bounced early and they don't win the Natty.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. Overall, incredible record. Ryan Day against the Big Ten as head coach of Ohio State. Against the Big Ten, outside of Michigan, he's 47-1. 47-1 in Big Ten play outside of Michigan, but against the Wolverines, of course, he's 1-4, and he's lost 4 straight. And, that just can't happen. And even when Jim Harbaugh was here, Harbaugh, as the losses to Ohio State, he was getting 10-win seasons, and Michigan was like generally good, but couldn't beat the Buckeyes. And there were people that wanted to put Jim Harbaugh on a rocket and fire him to the moon because he couldn't beat Ohio State. Yeah, that's right. He couldn't beat Ohio State. And that's how much this rivalry means. And so it doesn't really matter how good the other part of your record is if you can't get it done in this rivalry, because it means so much to both sides. So do I think he's going to be fired? I don't know. The athletic director, I think it was the athletic director for Ohio State, came out recently and said, hey, he's still got our full support. We're all focused on making a run here in the playoffs. And I think that that's all true. But certainly during the offseason, maybe it's a situation similar to what we saw with Jim Harbaugh after 2020, where they go to him and they say, we're going to restructure your contract. We're going to cut this thing in half, and we're going to do some other things or whatever. And if you want to be here, you can stay. If you want to walk, you can walk. But we're going to make some changes here to your contract, and you're going to need to beat Michigan. And it's a risky proposition when the rivalry shifts back to Ann Arbor and you're going to have Bryce Underwood. And keep in mind, Ohio State's losing a shit ton of talent after this season that came back for this year specifically. So that will be one to keep your eye on. And Trent, if you were a betting man, is Ryan Day coaching at Ohio State next season?
If Ryan Day, I'll say it again. If Ryan Day gets bounced early,
right now, you don't know what's going to happen. All you have is the information you have right now. If you had to place a bet, is he back or is he gone?
I don't think he's coaching there.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know, man. I find it hard to believe they would let him go, but I also find it hard to believe they would keep him. It's just such a weird.
I think it's to a point now that Ohio State dominated for as long as it did against Michigan, that you can't accept losing to Michigan 4 years in a row, especially to this Michigan team, especially to a 6-win Michigan team entering the game 20.5-point favorites. Like, I don't think that you can accept that. And Ryan Day has looked clueless. He's called terrible games. They've been dominated in the trenches all 4 years. I don't see how Ohio State's AD boosters, how they can sign up for it.
Yeah, and I mean it really is hard to think of another situation that is quite like this, where a head coach is the overall record is just incredibly good, like elite by any stretch. But because they can't get it done against one team, like they might be out. It's just that's what comes with the job. That's what comes with the territory. That was the case at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, and he had to go through it and he had to find a way to change the tide, and they certainly did that. Will Ryan Day be able to do it? I'm not sure. But if Trent, you're saying he's gone, if I were a betting man, I think he's back in Columbus.
I mean, I will say he's what is he 44-1, I think, against every other Big Ten team.
47-1. 47.
Okay. 47-1 against the Big Ten, not including Michigan. Like the dude can win games. But if you're happy with 10 or 11 wins and a loss against Michigan every year, then I mean, I guess they'll sign up for it. The way that the trajectory of this rivalry is going, I don't think Michigan's slowing down. I really don't.
Yeah, and to be honest, his saving grace is the college football playoff expansion, because without expansion, Ohio State is not in the playoff after losing to an unranked team, which, by the way, first time Ryan Day has ever lost to an unranked team as head coach of Ohio State. I think it's the first time it's ever happened since 2018 for Ohio State overall. Against Purdue was the last time. But in the traditional 4-team playoff, Ohio State loses that game, they're out of the playoff. And I think if that was the case, Ryan Day is for sure fired out of the playoff, out of the Big Ten championship picture. He's gone. The 12-team playoff, I think, will be his saving grace, and maybe Ohio State can make some noise in the playoff. But like I said on Saturday, like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they do. They win one game, they win 2 games, they win it all, they win the national championship. It doesn't matter. Michigan ruined their season, and they can hoist the trophy and they can be excited and they can pump out their chests and they can wear that gear. But all I'm going to see when I look at, let's say it is a national championship gear, all I'm going to see is, oh, that was the year you lost to 6-5 Michigan. And that's all anybody's going to see. Their championship season, if it happens, is already ruined. And that is just phenomenal as a Michigan.
Obviously, man, anything could happen on any given Saturday, but the way Ohio State looked against Michigan, I don't see any scenario they run the table and win it all.
Right.
I don't see it.
No, and we've talked about it before, and I've gotten a lot of shit for it. I said it when they were 8-1. I said they looked like the most beatable 8-1 team in the country, and I believe that. I mean, you could just see that there were issues with this team. A lot of firepower, but if you're not built mentally and you don't have the right coaching staff in place, yeah, you can beat the shit out of unranked teams unless you're playing Michigan. But when it comes, push comes to shove, Ryan Day, just like James Franklin, they struggle in those big moments, and Ryan Day on Saturday struggled in another big moment. And I think it's becoming a complex now. At some point, it's just a thing, and maybe seeking greener pastures elsewhere is healthy just for the mental, to get out of this rivalry for Ryan Day, because I don't think that mental aspect is ever going to go away. That this loss for Ryan Day and for Ohio State was completely devastating.
I think what you need to know there is Ryan Day compared losing to Michigan 3 years to his father's death.
Yeah.
Like that tells you everything that you need to know about Ryan Day's mental health, talking about Michigan.
Yep. There's no question about it. It probably got brought up in the press conference. Larry from the YouTube page says, after Trent's score prediction, Sharon after the game was saying, "Where's Trent at right now? This is a tough team.
This is a tough team right here."
Yeah. What was your score prediction on Saturday, by the way? I don't remember it.
31-21 Ohio State.
Wow. Zero faith.
Chris, what was yours, Chris?
I think I was 24-20 Ohio State.
Oh,
I thought it would be close. I thought it would be, but I did predict 2 interceptions from Will Howard, which I was right. And I did predict it would be a 1-score game in the fourth quarter, which I was right. I just happened to think Michigan would be on the wrong side of that 1-score game. Turns out they were on the right side. Thank you, Dominic Zavada and Khalil Mullings. And really, Davis Warren, made some mistakes. There's no question about it. But that was a legacy game for Davis Warren. I mean, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this.
I can't wait to hear this one.
Davis Warren. Davis Warren. I don't think an NFL team is going to draft Davis Warren. Okay, I'll say that. But he was the starting quarterback that day. He did hit Peyton O'Leary in a couple of key moments. He did do enough to get the offense in scoring position. And so, again, former walk-on, his backstory is incredible. And I can't, dude, how good do you feel about, I saw somebody put a picture on Twitter, I think it was. And on one side, it was Davis Warren as he was going through chemo and he was hooked up to everything and he didn't have hair. And on the other side was him standing, celebrating the win in Ohio State. I mean, dude, that shit feels good. Yep. I think Davis Warren knows he's not going to be a quarterback in the NFL. I think everybody knows that. But for him to be the quarterback that led the Wolverines into Columbus to get that win, you got to feel real happy for a guy like that. Real happy for a guy like Peyton O'Leary, who's been with the program for a while, who made some big plays on Saturday. I mean, if Peyton O'Leary doesn't make a couple of those catches, this game could go a different way. So some unsung heroes in that game that really need their flowers as well. And Davis Warren, certainly a big part of that. But dude, that interception to Jack Sawyer.
Yeah. Oh my God.
When that happened, I was losing my shit. I thought before it happened, I'm like, Michigan's winning. Michigan is going to win the game. And then he tosses that interception. What was it? Marlon Klein? Who was it?
Hogan Hansen. He missed Hogan Hansen 3 times that game. That would have all been big plays. He missed the freshman 3 times, and that was the 3rd time. And it was like, I mean, me personally, I'm like, well, I mean, that was Michigan's, that was their chance.
Yeah.
And throwing that interception, he was wide open. I'm thinking, yeah, Ohio State's now going to milk the clock away and win this game.
It just kind of felt like the type of turnover that you weren't going to be able to recover from because you couldn't afford to make those kinds of mistakes in this type of game. But Michigan's resilience won the day, obviously. And how about, another unsung hero, Alex Orji, ripping off I don't know how long that run was, but also helping to put the Wolverines in scoring position. Trent, I saw that you were shitting on Alex Orji, said it looked like he was running in cement.
No, he was slow-mo, man. Like it looked like he had a wide open, well, he did have a hole, and it was just green grass, and it just looked like he was barely making those strides.
I saw him post something on Instagram, and I think he was alluding to, the commentary surrounding that run, because you weren't the only one who thought that, but he was essentially, at least if I read it correctly, it was like, hey, I came off the bench cold and did what I had to do. So like, I mean,
he was legit cold too.
It was legit cold. It was freezing that day, hadn't been in the game. And then all of a sudden he comes in, rips off the big run. And so everybody playing their part, everybody playing their role, and then the mental toughness, the resiliency, that's Michigan football. And it's so great to see that for as many questions as you had on the roster in terms of talent and execution and play calling, at the heart of it all, what made this program so special, and we were starting to question it, but at the heart of it all, what made them so special, it's still there. And that's why they won in Columbus on Saturday. And I think that's why we're going to see it continue moving forward. And I'm very excited about that. And if you're Sharon Moore, you obviously got to feel really, really good about what you saw from this program on Saturday. Yep. Let's continue to get to some of these comments or questions.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
Let's throw that in there. Thought we were going to have to retire these. They are sticking around.
This is a team here.
Oh, goodness. You wanted to hurt.
How far are we behind now, Chris?
The leader. I'm at 12-17, so I'm quite a bit behind. Jason from the Facebook page, Jason Real says, extend Ryan Day's contract. Yeah, I see a lot of that right now. People are clamoring for Ryan Day to stay. I mean, is your preference right now, Trent? You would prefer Ryan Day to stay, right? Rather than Ohio State.
Give Ryan Day a lifetime contract.
Yeah, I would. If it was Ryan Day or potentially another head coach, please give me Ryan Day, because Michigan.
Which is wild to say, because like as much as we love to hate on Ryan Day, he is a good coach. Ryan Day is a good coach. He has a Michigan problem and now a Sharon Moore problem, and Sharon Moore is not going away anytime soon, I don't think. So he's got an issue.
Yeah, and Dwayne Jones from the Facebook page, I also saw this tweet as well. I can't remember the former player's name, but I've seen quite a few former players come out. Craig Krenzel came out with some harsh words for Ohio State and the staff. Beanie Wells, former running back, came out and had some things to say about the Buckeyes starting some shit after the game when he thought they should have dealt with it in the first 60 minutes. But Dwayne Jones from the Facebook page, he says, I saw a tweet from a former player that said the year they lost to Alabama in the national championship at halftime, Day just went into his office and blamed the assistant for losing. I did see that tweet, and it's a former player, basically saying, he was like, I knew Ryan Day wasn't the guy when this happened. And he's talking about when they were down at halftime against Alabama in the national championship, how Ryan Day went into the locker room, walked into his office, and just started yelling at the staff. And so it's not just rabid fans at this point that are calling for Ryan Day. There's former players now that are fed up with this. And if you go back to, it's really interesting when you watch Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel, when they paid a visit to Ohio State's practices. I'm not sure if it was during spring or fall camp. I think it might have been with fall camp, but Urban Meyer flat out said, this is the best roster ever assembled at Ohio State. Best roster ever. Jim Tressel signed on. The best team they have ever had at Ohio State. And there are some people that think Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel were setting the stage for, hey, we're saying this out loud. You have the best team that perhaps has ever been in Columbus. Get it done or get out. And so, yeah, man, it's not, Kirk Herbstreit a lot of times. And I think he signed on to the AD's tweet basically saying, or comments saying that we're behind Ryan Day. It's not just the wacky folks at this point. It's not just the crazy ones. These are people who have been with the program, played at Ohio State, that think that things just aren't going the way they're supposed to go at Ohio State. And a big reason for that is obviously the lack of success against Michigan.
It's got to make guys like Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer sick, especially Meyer, because he's the one who signed off on Ryan Day getting the head coaching job when he was gone, when he left. So, dude, it's got to make those guys sick, because they had a winning record against Michigan. They knew what it took to beat Michigan. And then you have Ryan Day, and it's got to make those guys just so disgusted.
Yeah. Mason Graham it did sound like when Jack Sawyer was saying that there were some tears. It sounded like it. I couldn't make it out. The resolution wasn't good enough, but it sounded like tears. Like sometimes you can just hear tears, and it sounded like tears. A lot of comments in here.
Did you see that run that Kalel Mulling sprung there late in the game? Jack Sawyer had a chance to tackle him, and he missed the tackle.
I did not see that, but
yeah, he was the last guy who had the chance to tackle Mullings at the line, and he missed it.
On par. Sam from the YouTube page says, was Gus Johnson drunk? He's usually spot on, but he was sloppy. Look, I don't know what's going on with Gus Johnson lately.
He's kind of been that way all season, I feel like.
Yeah, there might be something going on there. It first started out, he was calling an Ohio State game, and I think that there was like a scoop and score, off of a fumble or whatever, and Gus Johnson was like, and Ohio State scoops it up, takes it in the end zone, touchdown Buckeyes, and people were just like, what the hell? Like, that's not Gus Johnson. He's usually losing his mind, but like, I'm not, people have shit going on in their lives, and I'm not going to speculate. Maybe there is something there, but I'll say this about Gus Johnson. The way that he called that toward the end of the game, I thought was flat out bullshit. When Sharon Moore, after Michigan locks up the game and takes the knee, and Sharon Moore turns and starts to wave to the crowd, Gus Johnson saying Michigan gets the win, monumental win, and they didn't have to cheat this time to do it. Like, that coming from a commentator was bullshit. And I think that he probably should issue an apology for that. And then after the game, to sit there and basically blame Michigan for what was taking place. As I've said before, you don't have to like it. You don't have to appreciate it. It can piss you off, but the aggressor wasn't the team celebrating. The aggressor was the team that had a problem with the celebration. And Gus Johnson put it all on Michigan, saying it was what, did he say classless? How did he, what was the exact, unsportsmanlike type celebration? And he was going on and on and on. And,
even Joel was like, listen, man, like it happens. It's part of the game.
Joel was like, calm, as nicely as he could say, like, calm the hell down here, Gus. It's, the Michigan has the right to celebrate. Again, 3-touchdown underdog on the road. You have the right to celebrate. But I think a lot of people have grown fond of Gus Johnson over the last, especially Michigan fans, over the last 3 years, because he's been on the call for, 2021 Michigan, Ohio State, 2022 Michigan, Ohio State, 2023 Michigan, Ohio State. And all of those great moments that have happened, Gus Johnson has been on the call. Like, we had it on the soundboard here, like him shouting, "The Don!" like that type of shit. But I don't know what's going on with him, but the way he called that, particularly at the end by bringing up cheating and then shitting on Michigan for being, the reason why that was taking place. I think that
the cheating part's what really took went overboard for me.
Why would you say that?
Yeah, there was absolutely no need to say to bring that up. None at all.
Yeah. Maybe he was trying to be cute. Maybe he was trying to be, he says a lot of odd things. Like, what's another word for a home run? A tater. Like, I've never even heard that in my life. So maybe it was another one of those things where he was just trying to be cute. And look, I'm sure when you're a commentator, you say some shit sometimes and it doesn't always hit or it doesn't come out the way you want it to. Much like doing these when we do it live, I'm sure, I know for a fact not everything comes out the way I want it to, but that's the nature of live television or podcasting or whatever the hell you want to call it. Still trying to catch up. I'm at 12:20 here, so I'm very far behind.
With Gus Johnson too, I don't know how many people know this, but he is a self-proclaimed Michigan fan. Like, he grew up in the Detroit area. He's worn Michigan clothing. Like, he supports Michigan. And for him to act the way that he did after the game, it makes it even more weird the way that he acted.
Yeah, he's on my shit list. I don't know that I'll ever forgive him unless he issues a public apology. So that's just where I stand with Gus Johnson right now. We will not be exchanging Christmas cards. Amazing performance by Michigan. Big QB battle next year. Can't wait. Yeah, for sure. We'll have plenty of time to talk about the quarterback situation at Michigan during the off season. Connor Stallion said every team in the Big Ten has a Connor Stallions. God, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do the Connor Stallions thing here. We do need a screener. If anybody out there wants to be a screener for our show, just go ahead and send me a message here. Gus Johnson with the world famous Ohio State talk needs to stop. Yeah, and like I said, commentators, everybody has their sort of thing that they do. Like Mike Breen with bang. I love it. I love it. Phenomenal, right? It's just, you got to come up with something that works. Gus is working on it. Hausman played his ass off. Yeah, there's no question about it. Ernest Hausman played a hell of a game. Even Jay-Sean Barham, I thought he played better than he has played all season long. Mason Graham was an absolute animal in the middle. Kenneth Grant was an animal. Derek Moore was an animal. Like, all those guys, the entire defense, the secondary, Amir Hall coming up big. Like, these guys were just making plays defensively. And so you really have to give a shout out to the entire defense. And, they're going to have some big holes to fill because a lot of those guys are going to be off to the league. Probably not going to see him play in the bowl game. We'll see, but
I'm really interested to see who opts out on the bowl game and who does Michigan look to play? Like, do they try to play Jordan Marshall and Micah Kapana more? Do they look to play Jaden Davis at all in the bowl game to see what he has type of a situation? That's going to be very interesting to see what Michigan does.
Yeah, for sure. Would like to see some of the younger guys definitely get an opportunity because, quite honestly, I would expect the older guys, the guys that are, potential first rounders. If you're playing to make a statement, yeah, then maybe you should play. But Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, if those guys decide like we're going to sit this one out, like won't change anything about how I feel about them and their legacy at Michigan. Those guys are rock stars.
Yep.
Trent was in on it. Trent, were you part of the fix?
Could have been.
Field goals.
Could have been.
Have your milk now, cry babies. Okay. Sorry, it's just weird. I mean, there's so many. This is a testament to you guys. You're very active in the comments, and I am 30 minutes behind on them. And so
it's always funny because we get on here and Chris is like, hopefully today's active. I'm like, it's always active. We're going to have plenty of comments, questions.
Yeah. This is good. This is somebody calling for you to do your job a little bit better. Larry from the YouTube page says, after reading Trent's article about which seniors should come back, can Trent post an article and point us to where you can find a list of who is done and out of eligibility? I think that would be a great idea so people can get a good sense of, hey, who are some of these guys that are coming back or who are the guys that are definitely done? Thank you for that, Larry. Let's try to take one or two more questions before we get out of here. I see Sean Patrick Kane from the Facebook page. He says, question, after the last 2 weeks, OSU and Underwood, do you think anybody might come back instead of declare? And if so, who? Interesting question. I mean, do you think that the way that this season is sort of ended and played out, that somebody who might have thought they were going to try to go pro would decide to come back? Or do you think that whoever those decisions were made long ago?
I mean, I feel like the only four that are worth, Rod Moore, but I think that he will come back for that fifth year.
Yeah.
But I think the main ones to talk about is probably the big four. And I don't think Will Johnson or Mason Graham will come back. I really don't think Colston Loveland will return. Obviously, you would love to see that, but I think the only one you can make a strong argument for would be Kenneth Grant. I know that projections, he's a late first round pick. He could come back and he would star on the Michigan defense. He would be the guy. So maybe Kenneth Grant would up him to a top 10 pick, possibly in the 2026 draft. But it's hard to believe any of those four will come back.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, I think, in the era of NIL and being able to pay these guys and compensate them well for coming back, it gives you a shot. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, I just don't see it happening. I think Grant's gone. I think Mason Graham is gone. Colston's gone. Will Johnson obviously gone. I
like a guy like Derek Moore, he should come back for another year.
Yes, I would have Derek Moore come back another year. Does Rayshon Benny? He's got more eligibility.
Yeah, he has 1 year. He could come back. He could use a fifth.
Rayshon Benny for sure would have to come back.
TJ Guy could come back.
Yeah. So I mean, Derek Moore, TJ Guy, Rayshon Benny. Like you're starting to see what potentially this defensive line can look like next year, and there's still a lot of solid pieces that are going to be there. Ernest Hausman.
Yep. He's only a junior, so he can come
junior.
Back. Barham could come back. He's a junior.
Barham could and should come back. And I've heard there's been some talk about, they should move him to the edge. And I would subscribe to that as well, just given how he's built and his physicality and his speed. Yeah, man, there's every reason to believe they're going to be missing some pieces. But dude, think about like some of the transfer portal guys that they brought in that didn't even see the field this year. Like Michigan is going to have some options defensively. I don't think it's going to completely fall off, even though they're losing quite a bit of guys. Should be really interesting to watch how that all plays out. And then they're going to be hungry in the portal.
Yeah, that's the thing too. The portal, Michigan can go probably get whatever it wants in the portal, especially with NIL right now.
With NIL, with Bryce Underwood coming, with still owning Ohio State. I mean, even for a down year for Michigan, this is a pretty damn good down year compared to what down years used to look like in Ann Arbor. Like, this isn't too bad. We'll take it. If this is as down as it gets, I'm good. I just don't want it to happen again next year. I mean, you got to be in the playoffs. With a 12-team playoff, you got to be in the playoffs.
You got to.
I don't know. Do we have any more questions? I'm still at 12:51. I'm getting there. We'll just throw this out here.
This is a tough team right here.
What about a little bit of this? Oops, sorry, wrong one. Bobby from the Facebook page with a statement. He said, Chris, I said Friday that field goals weren't going to cut it in this game. Boy, was I wrong, but I'm glad I was wrong. Yeah, field goals cut it. I mean, nobody anticipated If you had told me that Ohio State was only going to score one touchdown in the entire game and it was going to come in the first half, I would have been like, there's no way. There is no way that's going to happen. Not with that offense, not in their own building. And sure as shit, Wink Martindale and that defense figured it out. Hogan Hansen. We had pepper
Chris
spray.
is so bad at grabbing comments.
Hey, what do you want me to do? There's like 50 million comments in here, and
I love it.
That's why I tell you, get here on time, get them in soon, because we spend about 10 minutes on each one of them. And then by this point, after an hour, it's like, I need help. I need somebody to screen, and I need somebody to go through. I am skipping over dozens and dozens.
I wish I had access where I could just click on them, but I can't. So it's all on Chris.
It's insane. Yeah, you're right. I got to be the beauty of the show. I got to, there's a lot happening over here that people just aren't aware of. He's from Detroit, so we're still on the Gus Johnson thing.
Oh my gosh.
Am I getting dragged in the bottom here?
No, there's only been one about it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Trust me, I'll let you know if you're getting dragged. It'll be great.
Dan Dickerson, not sure why somebody put that in here, but screw that guy. I was hearing Grant might possibly come back. Can the Don return?
Nope.
Oh, he is out of eligibility. When it comes to Donovan Edwards, what do you think about, like, I mean, where does he fit in terms of a potential NFL future? Obviously, this season didn't go the way we want. We've seen big plays from him, but compared to what we all thought it was going to be, and I think he'd be the first to tell you, production-wise, it didn't go the way that he hoped it would. Where do you see him fitting in at the next level?
I think somebody will take a shot on him. Obviously, production-wise, it's going to be late, I believe. But I think he has too much of a skill set for a team to pass up, especially a pass-happy league that the NFL is. Like, you could possibly try to transition him to a slot receiver at the NFL level. I think there's definitely a role for Donovan Edwards, but it's not going to be nearly as high as people were thinking going into the season.
Yeah, and I would agree 100%. I think that there's some role, and I think that there's some team that's going to look at him and say, whether it is in the slot, on special teams, supplemental reps at the running back position, somebody's going to give him the opportunity. And you never know, man. Like, Nico Collins wasn't an all-star when he was at the University of Michigan, and he has turned into something special in the NFL. And that's not to say that it's a similar case with Donovan Edwards, but you just never know, man. You get with the right team, the right offense, the right offensive line, the right coach, the right set of circumstances, and a guy like Donovan Edwards can flourish at the next level. So I have reached the bottom here. Let's do this. We'll take one last question on this. Because I do think it is a mystery here. Eric Miller from the YouTube page says, what's up with Jair Hill and the jersey change? I hope he doesn't transfer this offseason. Trent, any final thoughts on the mystery of the Jair Hill jersey? You had a thought on what might happen. Did we talk about that?
No, we don't got to bring that up.
No, Trent, tell the people what you thought. Trent thought he had solved the mystery as to why Jair.
Dude, I felt smart when I figured it out. Well, I thought I figured it out.
He felt so smart he needed to give me a call and talk about it. We chatted about it. He thought he figured out why Jair Hill changed his number from 20 to number 35. Trent, why don't you fill in the folks? Give them insight into your football mind. Why did you think that happened?
Well, I looked up Jair Hill's recruiting history. He played corner, receiver, and running back. While he's number 20, Kalel Mullings is also number 20. So maybe I thought Michigan was going to pull a fast one and put Jair out on offense with Kalel Mullings. Like, it made all the sense in the world. You do something that you've never done all year, put Hill on offense for this game, spice it up a little bit, but it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. No, look, Eric, I think I don't want to speculate on it. I just don't. I think that whatever happened, Sharon Moore said they're dealing with it internally, and I think that that's probably where we're going to leave it. I mean, it's you're talking about a kid who's in college who potentially has a bright future ahead of him as a football player, and you just hope that whatever the situation is, they get it figured out. And if he's still in Ann Arbor, and there's no reason to believe he won't be, I think Jair Hill can be a big piece of the Michigan defense moving forward. He grew a lot on the field this year, which is why that change at corner I think was so puzzling. But we'll see what it means for him. And I'm not going to dive into the rumor mill and sort of some of the things that were floating out there. Just I think it would be irresponsible to do that. So overall, at the end of the day, Trent, it's a Michigan win. It's a 7-win season. Potentially 8 with the bowl game, right?
Yep.
I mean, dude, 8-5. Bryce Underwood beat your rivals, beat Ohio State. It's starting to sound like it
win your trophy games. They won the trophy games.
Man, this is shaping up to be a pretty damn good season for Sharon Moore. We won't be back on Wednesday to talk about it, but we will be back the following Wednesday for Fan-Led Wednesday. Before we get out of here, let's just do some house cleaning on that. So the season is over. Football season is over at this point. Obviously there's a bowl game that's coming, but Trent and I, the schedule is going to shift from, typically we do 3 shows a week. We are back down to the 1 show a week. It's going to be Wednesday at noon. So it will be a regular show, fan-led show, engaging show. So look for that. So we won't be back this Wednesday because it's National Signing Day or early signing period. We're going to be covering that. We won't be back on Monday. We're going to shift that to Wednesdays, and then you can catch us every single Wednesday at noon from there on out. So we hope to keep you here, hope to keep you engaged in the conversation, man. This season has been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but man, has it been fun and interesting to talk about, and I look forward to doing it more with you guys during the off season. Until then, we'll see you on Wednesday. Not this Wednesday, next Wednesday. Appreciate all you in the comments. Thanks.